happy, exhilarating, satisfying, interesting. In other words, earlier we were talking about the vortex of attraction or the vortex of creation. And we're talking about being outside the vortex or inside the vortex. And that when you're outside the vortex, action seems more important. And when you're inside the vortex, you have all of this power and leverage. Well, we want you to equate this inside the vortex, even though you're still in your physical body, with what it feels like in non-physical. In other words, the reason that many people have a hard time easily coming with us in our knowledge of how the universe works is because they are rooted in this physical reality where they have become accustomed to seeing it and hearing it and smelling it and tasting it and touching it. And so we suggest that the fastest way to all of the manifestations that they can see and hear and smell and taste and touch that would please them is to leave aside for just a little while their intense perception of physical reality and try to understand this non-physical reality, this vibrational reality. But the only way for you in your physical setting to even begin to explore this vibrational reality, you can't see in there, you can't hear or smell or taste or touch. In other words, you feel your way in. You feel your way in. It's an emotional place where you discover this state of being, you see. That's what non-physical is like. It's a state of being. And of course, we perceive all kinds of things. And we don't want you to think that it's boring in here because we are privy to everything that you are living. In other words, we can focus our beingness to this leading edge extension that you are all standing on and beyond. We not only see from where we stand inside your vortex all that you have lived that is the leading edge extension of this time-space reality, we get to see what you've put into this vortex, and that's what we give our undivided attention to. So what the non-physical is like for us, it's where we get to stand in the knowledge of all of the wonderful things that all of you have put into your vortex of creation. We get to see and feel and know the success that you've been reaching for. We feel and know your abundance and your wellness, you see. This is a big place, non-place, where we stand. It is all that you all have been creating. It's what you call your future manifestation, but it's the present reality. That's what it's like here. This is where people are happy. This is where knowledge runs like rivers. This is where confidence is high. This is where an understanding of who you are runs rampant. This is where worthiness abounds. This is a place where any idea that has ever been imagined is in full fruition. This is a workshop. This is a factory. This is a place where the fullness of everything that you've even begun to dream is playing out before us in vivid terms. This is what you call your future that we get the privilege of living and experiencing and relishing now, you see. Wow. And you don't have to die to know that. You get to come here where you feel it. Just imagine the difference between releasing unworthiness and knowing worthiness. Can you even begin to get a sense of what it feels like to just know your value and your goodness for sure? For sure? Unequivocally, for sure? Completely? Can you even taste a little bit of the love that washes through you and the arms of source that wrap around you as you know the wholeness and the goodness that is you? How all doubt about who you are just evaporates as the wholeness of who you are is there. That's what it's like here where we are, you see. Can you feel what non-physical is like in a new and vivid way? And do you get that it's only an emotional journey away for you? And have we convinced you that you are vibrational in nature? And can you feel a new desire moving within you of aligning with the fullness of who you are? Do you feel a new appreciation for the contrast that maybe at the beginning of this gathering you thought you could do with a little less of? Don't you like the expansion that is being born for you, through you, by you? Aren't you willing to let go of the pettiness of physical life that's sort of been bogging you down and holding you back? Aren't you just eager to start loving, which is natural to you, and living that love, which is natural to you? Don't you find yourself just exhilarated about the idea of being source energy in physical form, moving around this physical time-space reality for the express purpose of taking thought beyond? Don't you just adore being such important catalysts to the expansion of this universe? Don't you feel proud for the part you've played? Don't you just love the others with whom you share your planet? And isn't their variety and diversity just the most wonderful thing? Don't you just love in ways that you cannot even define in words the balance that all of the different beliefs and interests and desires hold? Can't you feel the power of that balance? Don't you just love that out of all of that variety is born this vibrational reality that is the future of that which you call life on planet Earth? Doesn't it feel good to you that you are fulfilling your purpose in the way that you meant, that you came into this body and that you exposed yourself to the contrast and that you have been part of the expansion? And don't you just love knowing that not only have you been an important part of the expansion, but that you can make your claim on the expansion that you've carved out here and now? Don't you love knowing the eternal nature of your being? Don't you just love knowing that you will never, ever, 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 ever come to an end? Don't you love knowing that you didn't come here to get something done, but instead you came for the thrill and the joy of being part of the process? Don't you just want to walk up to all people in all parts of the world, no matter where they stand and what they're doing? And don't you just want to say to them, thanks for your part. I don't really understand your life. I don't even know where you come from. I don't even understand why you want what you want. But thanks for being the different part that plays the different role that adds to the future that we are all about. Don't you want to say to everyone, I'm glad to know that this vortex of creation that we have all carved out has well-being of such huge proportion that none of us, even if all of us collectively, humanly, got out of the vortex at the same time, that we could not set off the balance of well-being that is certain for all of us. Don't you love knowing that life will continue to 20,012 and beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond? And does anything else make any sense to you? Don't you feel the power of this vortex of creation? And can't you feel that it's queued up for more and more and more and more and more? Don't you love knowing the eternal nature of your being? And aren't you eager to just carve out your joyful part in the moment? Aren't you ready to put down your burdens and stop struggling to defend and defend and guard against and take wrong things and make them right? Aren't you ready to embrace the rightness in all things while you pick out the specific things that are particularly of interest or desire to you? Don't you love knowing that you don't have to fix this planet, that you don't have to fix one other thing, that not one person needs to do one thing different? Don't you love knowing that you have perfect government and so does everyone else? Don't you love knowing that you have perfect gender and so does everyone else? Don't you love knowing that the diversity of religion and the diversity of beliefs and desires are perfect as they are? Doesn't it just take a big load off your shoulders to realize that things do not have to change in order for you to be all that you came here to be? Aren't you ready to let go of the resistance that you've been dragging around, that you picked up along this physical trail? Aren't you ready to just hold yourself in steady alignment? Aren't you ready to stake your claim at a little happier moment than yesterday, and then a little happier moment? Aren't you ready to practice the loving, positive expectation that the source within you never stops offering to you? Aren't you ready to make your claim on the non-physical, vibrational perfection that is the love that is truly you? Aren't you ready to let all that other stuff go? And isn't it nice to realize that You don't have to wait around for one other person to figure that out. Not one other person has to figure that out in order for you to find the freedom that is natural to you. So the path of least resistance is whatever it takes not to confront, you see. We really mean that when we say bring back the fist. Now, there are a lot of people even in this room that say, but come on, don't we need to stand up for ourselves? Won't we be a doormat? And we want you to understand that if you're all outside the vortex and inside the vortex is off the table of discussion and you want to win, then you better get big and strong and you better be able to beat them all up. And that's the game you play in. Let's call it the out of the vortex game, where brute force and good debate is really where it's at. But one who's in alignment is millions of times more powerful than those who are not. So if you make the decision that you want to connect with your true power, that you want to connect with who you really are, and further, you can't be joyful unless you do that, then it makes you willing to just let those things go by the wayside while you collect yourself inside the vortex. There are so many people who will convince you that you owe them an explanation. You owe them an explanation. But they don't just mean that. They mean you owe me the explanation that I want to hear. That's what and I'm not going to let you go until you say what I want to hear from you. And so what are your options? In other words, do you want to deny who you are? And this is really a big issue. It's the reason it runs so deep within so many of you, because the day you were born, you had a guidance system that people on the planet around you, mostly outside the vortex already, were saying to you, in order for me to feel good, you need to do these things. And so right away, almost all children look to their parents and teachers, and when they're smiling, then that's good, and when they're frowning, then that's bad. In other words, and they give up their own relationship to their own vortex by letting themselves try to please this one and this one and this one and this one. But then the longer you live, the more you realize that they're all fickle and they all want different things from you, and it just drives you crazy. In other words, the longer you live, the more you realize that something is missing if you're not in alignment with who you are. So we're just suggesting in as strong a way as we can that when you finally get it, that you're not going to feel good unless you're in alignment with who you are. But we know it's a big price to pay. I have to pay the price of joy in order to find my power. That's really what we're talking about. You have to pay the price of consistent joy and happiness and appreciation and alignment in order to really come into your true power. When you are in your true power, then it's not difficult for your life to go well for you, because first of all, law of attraction's not matching you up with things that don't match it. And in your desire to teach, and that's what happens to so many of you, you're a teacher, and so students come. And when students come, lots of teaching goes on. In other words, we don't know, in the conversation that we were just offering about Esther hanging up, we would not begin to say that the other person was wrong, or that the benefit of the whole thing was all Esther's doing. In other words, we so want everyone to understand that when there is a problem that is formulating, there is a solution that is formulating too. And what makes you want to sort of break away from those that are still beating the drum of the problem is that you're ready to move on to the solution, and often they're not. And you just can't move on to the solution while you're beating the drum of the problem. You have to let it go. We have enjoyed this interaction immensely. And we say to you that we are joyously and eternally, never-endedly, friskily, we're milking it in the vortex.